Welcome to Comm 207, Interpersonal Communication. I'd like to tell you a little bit about myself and about the course, so let's begin. First, let me tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Jenny Ty, and that's me kind of in the center there. To the right of my single picture is my family. I have 3 children, pretty much grown. We're here in a picture where we just finished going paintballing. Sounds a little bit odd, but trying to find ways to get 20-somethings interested in being together. So we had a really great time shooting each other with 500 paintballs. On this screen, you also see my obsessions. I'm obsessed with gardening, not just any type of gardening, but community gardening. I'm part of a large community garden, and we grow over 1,000 pounds of food each year that we donate. We also have about 75 refugee families that grow with us, so it's very exciting. To the far left is a picture of a Celtic braid on a Afghan that I made this year. Cost me over probably 400 hours worth of work to make this for my goddaughter for her wedding, but I am obsessed with knitting. So the last picture there you see are potatoes that are hanging in a grocery bag, so now we can avoid plastic in the grocery, but also a way for me to store produce. So pulling knitting and gardening together are probably the 2 things that I enjoy most. Let me tell you a little bit about my background. As a professional in Cincinnati, you can see down in that bottom right a much younger version of myself when my 26-year-old son was probably about 3. And in that picture also you'll see Roxanne Qualls. I worked for Cincinnati Central Credit Union, and at that time we were restoring financial services to over the Rhine. So the shot is a special day at Findlay Market where we were installing the first ATM, so there was access to cash in the community. I worked in Over the Rhine for about 15 years in the nonprofit sector, primarily in public and community relations. Prior to that, the picture on the bottom left that says Dream Big, and at the very bottom of that you'll see a series of heads. There were 10 of us that moved to Over the Rhine to live there and to work there, and our first project was securing funding for the Peasley Neighborhood School. And Dr. Chuck Schubert, who's featured there, was the person with the biggest dream in starting Crossroad Health Center, which now services thousands and thousands of people with affordable health care. And I was proud to be part of that team. I've also been at Xavier for about 22 years. So the picture with all my young and cool colleagues is something I'm very proud of. The communication department at Xavier is offering 4 different majors. So if you're not a communication major, just so you know, we have a advertising program, public relations, digital media, and then I teach in Comm Studies, which is the 4th of the communication majors. In addition to working at Xavier and teaching interpersonal communication, I teach presentational speaking, organizational communication, and conflict management. One thing that I wanted to mention is that Xavier reaches far beyond its campus. So if you're not from Xavier, the picture that I have there is of our Connaughton Learning Center. And what you can see below is that Xavier does reach beyond that campus. So if you're taking this online class from another part of the country, or actually even another part of the world, I've participated in the Jesuit Worldwide Learning Program, where we offer online courses to refugees. In this particular case, I was teaching interpersonal communication to refugees that were based in Malawi and in Kenya. It's a very rewarding program. The Jesuit Worldwide program offers opportunities for students to complete courses while they're living in a refugee camp. So now let's talk a little bit about your course. One thing that's really important to understand, and some people say, how can you teach interpersonal communication in an online course? But as you take a look at what we mean when we talk about engaged learning, the goal of engaged learning is for you as the student to allow your voice to be heard, to make real world connections with the people that are in your lives, and also to critically think through some of the issues that we're faced with when communicating. And primarily, if you look at the orange square here, learning by doing. We'll spend a lot of time actually using the world and our interaction with people in the world as our lab. So the goal is for you to be self-directed. I'm here as your guide, and I'm expecting that if you have a question or if something isn't going well, you'll let me know. So we operate under a framework of what's called competence, communication competence. What is the effective and appropriate behavior given the interaction context? As you can see, I have bolded the words effective and appropriate. When we talk about competence, whether or not we're really being successful in communicating, it's whether or not what we have said and how we've behaved is effective. And depending on the situation, that interaction context determines whether or not it's also appropriate. So we'll spend a lot of time working on how do we communicate effectively and appropriately given a particular situation or a particular interaction. So that involves learning about theory. Typically, we have always looked at communication as this model here where we've got a sender and a receiver and the message is traveling from one to the other. And what you'll see is the complexity of what actually occurs. So we can simultaneously be senders and receivers, and I'll get a lot more into that as we start talking about theory. But understanding theory helps to explain how we're communicating. And just like any other subject matter, communication is a science. So we'll study the components of communication from a scientific perspective. And last, we've got practice. So in addition to looking at theory, we'll also look at practice. I really like this actual cartoon. As you can see, it says, and that is why we lift on three. And communication, you've got the patient who no longer is on the table. So clearly, in practicing, how can we work to make sure that we're communicating effectively? So let's get started. Here's just a brief overview of how you can begin. When you get back to the Canvas course, you'll see a Start Here button. If you click on the Start Here button, that gives you all the information you need for course orientation. Please read the syllabus carefully, go through each of the modules, let me know if you have any questions. We are going to uphold those principles, so it's really important that you know what the syllabus says. Complete the course orientation assignments. You'll find those in the Start Here module. And then as you finish up the Start Here module, you'll finish by signing the course agreement. So with that said, I welcome you to the class and I look forward to working with you this semester.